Hashtag all narrations. Scene 1 to scene 80. Sometimes you're in the middle of your own life, a dinner with people you love, a moment that should matter, and you feel strangely far away from it, like you're watching it happen instead of living it. You can hear the conversation, you can see the faces, but you're somehow behind glass, observing. And the weird part is you're used to it. It's almost normal for you. You've probably never told anyone because how do you even explain that? Sometimes I feel like I'm not really here. It sounds strange out loud, but it's more common than you think, and it has a very specific explanation. One that starts with how your brain learned to protect you. This is not a random glitch. It is a deeply wired, deeply personal response. There's a moment researchers describe that a lot of people recognize immediately. You're sitting at your own birthday party, people are laughing, maybe singing, candles are lit, and you're watching it like it's a scene from someone else's film. You smile because you know you're supposed to, but inside, there's this quiet distance, like the volume on your own life got turned down. Psychologists have a name for this. It's called depersonalization. And before you scroll away thinking that sounds clinical and scary, it's not always. Most people who experience this are not in crisis. They're just wired in a particular way, and their brain does a very specific thing under pressure. Understanding that is the first step to changing it. Depersonalization, in its everyday form, is the feeling of being detached from your own experience. Not from reality exactly. You know where you are, you know what's happening, but from yourself within that reality. Like your sense of I went slightly offline. The technical definition involves a disruption in self-referential processing, which is the brain's ongoing job of tracking you as a continuous, present person moving through time. When that process gets interrupted, even briefly, everything shifts. You stop feeling like the one living the story and start feeling like the one watching it. That shift is subtle, but its impact on your life is enormous. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. There's a network in your brain that neuroscientists call the default mode network. It's most active when you're not focused on a task, when you're daydreaming, reflecting, ruminating, thinking about yourself. It generates your internal narrative, your sense of me. And in people who frequently feel this sense of observer distance, research suggests the default mode network becomes unusually active during moments that should bring them into the present. Instead of switching off so you can be here, it ramps up. It pulls your attention inward, away from the moment, into a kind of hyper-aware self-monitoring loop. You start watching yourself instead of being yourself. That loop is not a sign of weakness. It is your brain doing exactly what it was trained to do. Why would the brain do that? It sounds counterproductive. But here's the part most people never hear. This isn't a malfunction. It's a protection strategy. Stephen Porges developed polyvagal theory, which describes the nervous system's layered response to perceived threat. Most people know about fight or flight. Fewer people talk about the third branch, the dorsal vagal response, which is essentially a shutdown mode. When the nervous system decides that engaging fully is overwhelming or unsafe, it pulls back, not dramatically, not like a panic attack, quietly. It creates distance between you and the moment. Dissociative detachment is a spectrum, and at its mild end, it feels exactly like what you've been describing. That soft, glassy removal from your own experience. You're not broken. You are protected. For highly sensitive people, and researchers estimate that roughly 15 to 20% of the population has a nervous system that processes sensory and emotional information more deeply than average. Emotional overstimulation can trigger this response without any obvious danger being present. The threat isn't a predator. It's a room full of people expecting you to perform joy, or grief, or connection on cue. It's a moment loaded with meaning that feels too big to fully inhabit. The nervous system, doing exactly what it was designed to do, creates a buffer. There's a lesser-known study worth mentioning here. Researchers Simeon and Abugel spent years studying depersonalization disorder and noted something striking in their data on subclinical cases, meaning people who experience depersonalization regularly, but not at a clinical level. These individuals often showed heightened scores on measures of interoceptive awareness, the brain's ability to sense and track the body's internal signals. They weren't less aware of themselves. They were more aware. So much more aware that the brain learned to dampen the signal, to make daily life tolerable. That detail flips the whole narrative. This isn't about being emotionally numb or disconnected. It's about being so wired in that a circuit breaker trips. Think about that for a second. If you're someone who feels this way, the story you may have told yourself is that something is wrong with you, that you're not fully present, not fully alive to your own experience, not capable of real connection. But the research points somewhere else entirely. Your nervous system isn't broken. It became very good at a coping strategy. Probably early, probably for good reason. And it still reaches for that strategy when things get intense. The depersonalization is not the disease. It's the immune response. It kept you functioning when full presence felt dangerous or overwhelming. Now, what keeps it going? Because for some people, this becomes a kind of default state rather than an occasional visitor. Cognitive researchers studying self-referential processing have found that people who dissociate frequently often develop what's sometimes called an observer stance as their baseline. They get so used to watching themselves from the outside that first-person experience starts to feel unfamiliar, even threatening. The observer position becomes the comfort zone. There's a certain safety in the observer position. From there, you can't be blindsided. You can see things coming. You're in control of the narrative, in a way that full emotional presence doesn't allow. The observer stance is not a flaw. It is an adaptation that served a very real purpose at some point in your life. But there's a cost, and you probably already know what it is. Moments that should feel significant, the ones you'll want to remember, the ones people build their lives around, pass through you like scenery. You were there, but you weren't really there. And sometimes that gap is the loneliest thing in the world. The interesting work being done now sits at the intersection of interoceptive training and nervous system regulation. Not medications, not years of intensive therapy, though those absolutely have their place, but something more accessible. Practices that bring conscious attention back into the body, back into the present physical moment. Things that give the nervous system evidence that it's safe to land. Slow, deliberate breath work that activates the vagus nerve and signals the parasympathetic system to open back up. This is not a concept. It is a physiological process you can initiate yourself. Somatic grounding exercises that use texture, temperature, and movement to anchor the senses in real time. These are not metaphors. They are tools. Even something as simple as placing a hand on your chest and tracking your own heartbeat has been shown in studies on interoceptive awareness to gently reduce dissociative detachment in the moment. The goal isn't to eliminate the response. You don't want to dismantle something your nervous system spent years building. That response protected you. It deserves respect, not removal. The goal is to expand your range, to give yourself access to full presence when you want it, without forcing it. Because forced presence, for people who feel this way, almost always backfires. It creates performance anxiety around the act of feeling, which triggers more overstimulation, which triggers more distance. The pathway back isn't effort. It's safety. Your nervous system needs evidence, not commands. There's something worth sitting with before you go. If you've spent years feeling like a spectator to your own life, you may have quietly absorbed the belief that you're somehow less capable of connection than other people, less alive to experience. But that framing misses something important. The same nervous system architecture that sends you behind the glass during overstimulation also gives you extraordinary observational depth when you're in a regulated state. The capacity to watch, to notice, to perceive things others miss. That's not a defect running alongside the dissociation. It's the same trait, expressed differently depending on conditions. Think about what that means. The very thing that has sometimes made you feel less present is also what makes you unusually perceptive, unusually attuned. That's not a consolation prize. That is a genuine reframe of what you are and how you work. Your sensitivity is not your weakness. It is your architecture. What would it mean to approach your own inner experience with curiosity instead of judgment? Not to fix the part of you that goes quiet and retreats, but to understand why it learned to do that and to offer it something different, slowly, without force. That's not a small thing. For some people, it might be one of the most important questions they ever ask. The answer begins not with a diagnosis, but with a willingness to look inward. You've been watching your own life from a distance for a long time. Maybe it's time to get a little closer. And getting closer doesn't mean forcing yourself into the flood of feeling. It means building safety. One breath, one grounded moment, one small act of presence at a time. The nervous system learns through repetition. Every time you gently return to your breath, to your body, to the moment, you are retraining the very system that learned to pull away. It doesn't happen all at once. That's okay. The goal was never perfection. The goal is direction. And direction is something you can choose, starting right now. If this resonated with you, you are not alone. Millions of people move through their days behind that invisible glass, never knowing there's a name for it or a path through it. Awareness is the beginning, and you are already here, which means something in you recognized this, reached for this, and that recognition is itself a form of presence. The brain that learned to protect you by stepping back is the same brain now leaning in, listening, asking questions. That is not nothing. That is everything. Depersonalization is not a life sentence. It is a signal, one your nervous system is sending because it wants you to feel safe enough to be fully here. And the work of getting there is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is consistent. It is the slow, patient practice of telling your own system, you are safe now. You can come back. The distance you felt between you and your own life was never the truth of who you are. It was the shape of your protection. And protection, when it's no longer needed, can be gently set down. So breathe. Feel the weight of your own body. Notice what's around you right now. You are not behind glass. You are here. And here is exactly where you belong. That's where we leave you today. Not with a fix, not with a formula, but with a direction. Toward yourself. Toward presence. Toward the life that has been waiting for you to fully arrive. If you found this valuable, share it with someone who might be watching their own life from a distance. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer another person is the words that finally name what they feel. And if this is you, if this is your experience, know that the part of you that has been standing back and watching has also been keeping you safe this whole time. Thank it. And then, gently, invite it home.